Friends, family and keepers of the faith, welcome to another Del Boy blog. And as ever, we're going to date stamp this. It's year 4, blog 37, or in legacy numbers, blog number 193. My God, 7 weeks and it will be 200. And it's dated the 2nd of November. We're in November. We've gone past Halloween. I suppose the next big one for us will be Christmas. For my American friends, Thanksgiving. But my God, the year's gone quick. I never expected it to be quite as quick as it was, but with a massive event like I had in March with my mother, it's probably to be expected. But the weather is sunny. I mean, that's probably why my face is like sort of like glowy orange. I'm looking up at the monitor now and seeing myself and going, ooh. But I should be looking at the camera. But yeah, it's cold. And we're expecting some winds and rain midweek as we get the weather a little bit, from the hurricane that hit last week that I mentioned. Was it called Storm Melissa or something? Can't quite remember. But yeah, we'll get the tail end of that. It'll dissipate quite a lot before it hits us as it goes over the oceans, as they do. So the only thing that I have concerns with is over the next months is those high winds that we will get and the fences. I'm not so problematic with the right hand side of the fence, but the left hand side of the fence, my uncle told me that he'd put the posts in, but the wood is just about gone, and therefore it's prone now for the trellises at the top to at least blow in. Hopefully they won't, because trellises, like anything, have got gaps, and so the wind will pass through it, but it is the weakest point. So yeah, some concerns, but I'll worry about those when I get to them. And we'll talk a little bit about me later on, but we'll get the news out the way. So I'm looking at my pad here, and we start off with the war, which, as I said, I'll probably end New Year's Day, I think, unless something drastic happens with peace talks. It's nearing its end, and most people know it's just hostilities and peace talks and everything that's going on at the moment. So what I read this morning was fires have been seen in Russian port town after Ukraine drone strike. It set ablaze an oil tanker, which could disrupt Moscow's fuel exports. Recently, Kiev has intensified these strikes on oil and energy infrastructure, whose profits fuel the Kremlin's war effort. So you can understand why that's happening. Probably has a global effect as well. Trump's recent trip to China for talks hopes to increase peace between Russia and Ukraine, because China is a big benefactor of Russia. So can understand a little bit the reason for that talk. But I believe that it was to do with missiles and all that sort of stuff, and nuclear powered devices China seems to be involved in at the moment. As always, I read out the news as it is. I have no opinion on it other than I want the war to end, but everything there just stems from more hostility, more delays on peace talks, back and forth with everything. Doesn't seem to be getting too far. So in the UK, the biggest news story, which happened pretty much late last night, or was reported late last night, the police, to give an update later on today in Huntingdon, after 10 people were injured in train stabbings that occurred. Yes, so I was actually listening to 20th Century Gaming last night, and his wife came on talking about these stabbings, and I was totally disgusted by it. There I was, slowly sort of like relaxing after looking after my mother up until 9 o'clock the thing I was looking forward to was watching a friend play some games, and over the news you hear stabbings. It's always stabbings or something to do with terrorism and all that sort of stuff. It's disgusting. And I just feel for the families. I have no idea of any deaths. I don't know how many people were involved. My indications are it was 2 people. They always seem to act in tandem these days. If you remember rightly, there was the bombing that was going outside the Jewish, I think it was, temple, and there was one strapped with a bomb and another one that was the driver that was helping and assisting. Terrible, just terrible, and I want all that to stop. Little bit of local news. King Charles has spoken to a minister about Prince Andrew losing his military titles. Now, everybody will have some type of opinion with Prince Andrew. I've never liked him as a person. I do totally get that he was born a prince, so stripping that is a little bit difficult if you're a royalist. I'm not, so I couldn't care less. But the military titles, did he deserve them? Unsure. Not, we saw a lot when it was regards to Prince Harry and that about his term in the military, because all princes go into the military, usually go into the RAF or something like that, and he was partying and all of that sort of stuff. But apparently he worked hard. So and Prince Andrew was in the military very long period of time back. I've got no doubts that he probably went through all of the training camps and all of that sort of stuff. But I don't think he went into any hostility. Whatever titles he's got, I don't really have too much of an opinion on it. But Prince Charles obviously thinks stripping back is what's required. And I do think that all of this Prince Andrew did overshadow the big news story of Prince Charles going over to Italy and praying with the Pope. The first time that's happened since Henry VIII days, so 16th century, 15th century. So yeah, that was a major event overshadowed by a complete arse. That's all I've got to say about that. And on a lighter note, one that I think Ponder and my friend Steve would be interested in, Bonfire Nights Beaver Supermoon is to be the biggest and brightest of 2025. And I've always loved pictures of the moon. Don't know what it is, all those craters and people using just camera phones these days to pick up fantastic images. And Bonfire Night is November the 5th for us. America won't really celebrate that. It was the bombing of Parliament. Guy Fawkes. But apparently on that night we will have a very, very big supermoon. So that's quite exciting. That's really all the news, other than to pay homage really to Prunella Scales, who died this week. Prunella Scales has always been one of those people that's, for me, has been floating in the background. Being the first time I really knew Hover was Fawlty Towers, which was a great comedy, and she played a battle axe, according to Basil, in that comedy show. But later on, I've seen her in lots of things, and she was a big sort of like person who did plays on stage, that sort of thing. And so what she did on TV was mini parts and stuff. Although I do know she played Queen Elizabeth II in a drama, I think in the late 90s. I think she won a BAFTA for that. Not sure. But I'll always recognise her as Sybil Fawlty. But later on, it was great delight that she came to my hometown in one of the great canal journeys that she did with her husband at the time, Timothy West, who sadly we lost as well a couple of years back. Timothy West, what a great actor. I'll never forget his appearance in Tales of the Unexpected, in a story that involved it was called Royal Jelly, and it was one of those tales that, you know, right at the end you've got a shock ending like Twilight Zone stuff. But they used to love going along the canals. They turned up at our town and they actually watched a town crier, you know, going, oh yay, and looked at how the boats were built along my hometown. It's got a very big heritage on building canal boats in my hometown. So yeah, that was great. And the only other standout performance that I remember, she did a short science fiction film that I saw on the Sci-Fi Channel many years ago. I think it was when I got a Squarial, believe it or not. That's BSB at the time, British Satellite Broadcasting, before Sky took over and called it British Sky Broadcasting. Yeah, it was called Phoenix, and she was an evil dictator client type person who funded time travel experiments. I do remember that. It was just one of those little short films that Sci-Fi do, you know, very, very under budget type things. But she played a chilling type character in that. So that's probably why it stands out. Plus it's science fiction, of course. And anybody who knows me knows I love science fiction. So she died. It was very prominent for me. She died at 93 on the 27th, which was, I think, Thursday. But she died of vascular dementia. And that's exactly what my mother's got. So, of course, you can understand there's a tie here. And Tim West, her husband at the time, always said the most horrible thing about this disease is you slowly lose the person that you used to have. As much as vascular dementia will eventually take over the body, the brain will stop you from thinking that you need to breathe and all that sort of stuff, which is why it's called vascular dementia in a way. It's not the only reason, but other bodily functions such as learning, you know, how you swill your mouth out, you know, just to spit toothpaste out, becomes a function that you just don't know. And it aids into what I will be talking about my mother in a little while. So yeah. So I don't, that really is the news and just the sad passing of Pranilla Scales. What else wasn't she in adverts for Tesco? I think she was. Remember that? She did that for many years. You know, this was when adverts were quite fun. You know, we used to have Gold Blend coffee, you know, with Gareth, forgot his name now, Gareth, what was his last name? He was in the New Avengers anyway, and he used to be the person that used to shake the coffee beans in his hands. And we used to have the gravy adverts. You know, it was always the same family sitting around the table with Bisto gravy. You know, by the way, other manufacturers of gravy are available, not just Bisto. And, you know, I have to say that, don't I? Because I'm not sponsored by anybody. So we used to have all those sort of like fun adverts, you know, about British Gas, privatisation of British Telecom, you know, and all that don't tell Sid nonsense and all of that. They were fun, though. They were times where the adverts I see today, because I have to watch TV with my mum, they're all adverts for charities. You know, the Battersea Dogs Home, you know, you see these horrible pictures of donkeys walking along with their hooves not trimmed, and cats, you know, that been abandoned, and all that sort of stuff. And it's a horrible sight. But they're not. They're just adverts. Charities asking for money all the time. And then you get to, so there's very few adverts on underarm deodorant, soap, all of that sort of stuff. And I don't see any adverts other than what the next program's going to be, other than these charity adverts. And I know they can't stand outside really in the high streets anymore because the footfall of high streets has gone. So they have to do this, but it's not going to be long before I see the Christmas advert saying, please donate. And it will be a huge amount. This started happening a couple of years ago. they come out with these adverts saying, please donate £22 to this charity so that people that live on the streets can have a roast dinner at Christmas. I'll never forget that. I went, 22 quid, bloody hell. Because some of these are just, they want monthly payments off of you of £2 to £5, but I thought 22 quid, wow. Huge amount. But of course they're looking for a one-off, for the dinner, so it makes perfect sense, I suppose, in a while. Do the math, 22 quid divided by 12 months, or 11, because Christmas will be in December, so you don't really pay for that one. Maybe, I don't know. But yeah, a lot of these channels are watched by old age pensioners because they've got things like Heartbeat on and Downton Abbey and that sort of stuff. My favourite, my mum's favourite, is Hudson and Rex, believe it or not. This sort of crime thing with a dog. And I keep telling my mum, I keep saying to her, I said, this dog, honestly, solves the crime every day. I'm just going, the most intelligent, this bloke that sort of like goes along with solving the crime never actually finishes it because the dog intervenes and wins the day. Amazing. And it's got on now for about 4 or 5 seasons. Never ceases to amaze me. I just go to my mum and said, you like this, don't you? Why do you like this, mum? And she just goes, I like the dog. So there you go. Hudson and Rex. What can I say? 5 o'clock on one of the channels my mum watches. Heartbeat, well known. Downton Abbey, well known. You don't need to know much about that. She likes Midsummer Murders and Vera. That's another one she watches. But there we go. Anyway, that's the news. Talk a little bit about my life at work. Not much of a difference. I was on priority this week, so I was doing all the bulk uploads and all that sort of stuff. I happened to talk to my manager and say, do you know what? We ought to be doing more in regards to these people checking the data before we check it, because there's too many errors. Every single bulk upload I go into, I never just do it. I have to check the data and find a mistake and then report it to them, and they have to fix it, and then they send it back to me and I check it again, and it's on and on and on ad infinitum. The other ones are changes to addresses. It's what they call the site list. That's a pain in the arse, especially when people want a slight change because they want their department to be mentioned in the address. No, you're at a site, right? The post comes in. I am not going to put or split up a site into 5 or 6 different names for that site because there is a different department for each of them. That's why you have a post room. You know what I mean? That can be reception's job to get that to you. It's not for me to go around and split each site up into 6. And sometimes if it was a head office, that'd be 24, 25 departments. It's ridiculous. So, yeah, I'm constantly sending things back saying, are you sure that this is the correct address? Because, the government website lists it as the correct one that we've got, and then they back down and go, oh, yeah, okay. So it's a bit like that. Anyway, priorities. But because of our loss of one person who's coming back next week, thank God, so hope he's better now. I don't know what the issue is, but he's been off for a month and it therefore must have been pretty important. He's back next week, but he'll need to ease himself back in, just like I had to when I had a heart attack. It takes 1-2 weeks. So I expect my workload to be pretty high, continuing into next week. And other than an occupational health call that I had, it was the second call, to see whether there's anything that occupational health can do about helping me. It ended up as I thought it would be, which is I'm doing everything I can. Work need to understand the difficulty in being a carer and ought to back down in regards to the pressure of putting someone to go to Birmingham, say, for a meeting, or London for a meeting. I can't do these things. By the time I've got my mum up, and by the time my sister has to leave, and the travel on the train and walking from the tube and all of that sort of stuff, I'd be there for 2 hours. Absolute waste of time. It's why we've got this team talk and since COVID working from home thing. So that all that happened at the end was, yes, I'm going to be away from my desk at certain points. Yes, it's pretty much impossible for me to travel other than possibly to my local office where I've always worked, and that should be on occasion when possible, and down to me, not down to work. So yeah, there was a bit of a benefit from that. But my manager, or one of them, came back to me and said I was hoping for more. And I was going, well, what more were you hoping for? And this is the same manager that believes that when I sign in earlier in the morning, I'm not really at my desk doing work, which I took total offence to. And I told him, I don't know what you're expecting. I've got an orthopaedic chair for my own health, and I'm a carer for my mother who's got a degenerative problem. It's going to get worse, not better. So I'm hoping I'm like this for years because I want my mum to live forever. I keep telling my mum that, but I know she can't, but she laughs and says, oh, I can't do that. And I said, no, but you understand what I mean, Mum? She goes, yes. And she still recognises my name, so I live with the fact that she's not going that fast, but it is painful. I try to make my mum laugh as much as possible. There's a procedure that I have to do at night where I have to lift my mum up underneath her arm, and I tell my mum to put her arm around my waist, right? And this is to steady her so that we can put a pad on, pull her knickers up, and pull her pyjama bottoms up, right? We have to do this with one arm, right? It's bloody difficult. And she always grabs the pocket on my bum, right? And I said, Mum, don't stop pinching my bum. And she makes her laugh. She laughs and she goes, I'm not pinching your bum. I said, Mum, you're pinching my bum. And it makes her laugh, and it takes away the pressure of her mind thinking that her legs have got pain in them. This is what I have to do all the time, is a distraction, something that's fun, that takes away a difficult situation. And this is where I sort of have to go down the line of my sister and I work incredibly well together. Whenever something bad has happened with my mum, we work incredibly well. It's when things start to lax off, things start to degenerate. And that's why I think of my sister as being one of the most fantastic people you could ever come across. And I say that all the time. She just doesn't register my involvement that much. And that's why things degenerate. But she gets better every week. She now starts using the word we instead of I. Stuff like that. It's that sort of thing that depresses me. Right? Yeah, I've got a problem with my sister turning round and saying her side of the family hate me. That's been mentioned. And I've got a problem with her husband because he threatened me, right? But why am I not going to want to know about a birth, something that I might be involved with later on? I don't know, probably not. But you'd think the family would want to know, wouldn't you? And that your brother's going to be one of the first people you tell, especially when you turn up every day to care for my mum. So yeah, it's that sort of thing. But taking nothing away, my sister is absolutely a fantastic carer. She's looking after my mum from pretty much 8:30 in the morning all the time until she leaves. And as much as she's watching telly and all of that sort of stuff, she is observing my mum, cooking the dinner, washing up. She doesn't dry up, she doesn't put away. That's for me to do when I finish work, which is something I'd like to bring up with her and say, why am I drying up and putting your dishes away when you did them? right? But all of those things are minor, but they're big to me because I'm tired. I get tired because of 8 hours a day and then looking after my mum from the moment she's gone. Remember, I've got to make the bed and get the stuff out the dryer and hang it all up and cook my mum's tea or dinner, as some people call it. And, you know, it's a problem, right? This is where I'm going. The caring of the other carer in mum's life. Yeah. So enough of the nonsense in regards to that. My sister is a great person. Just things which involve me are not. So I want to clear the air on that one. So I've done work. The thing about mum is we found out after giving her her new tablet, which is called amitriptyline. It's not really a painkiller. It stops the brain. It affects the brain. And we hope, what the doctor hoped was it stopped the brain receptacles to the pain in her knees and her legs, which it hasn't. But it does leave you more unbalanced, right? And from Monday, so 2 days after taking the drug, my mum couldn't walk with the Zimmer frame in the morning anymore because she was crossing her legs, right? So she was putting one leg in front of the other instead of shuffling forward. So now we've got a new routine where we're having to use the wheelchair. And that's another big problem because the room has only got a 3-foot gap between the bed and the sofa that's in that room. And you therefore have to wheel the wheelchair in behind the commode, get her sitting on the commode. When she's finished, I have to lift her up, hold my mum for the whole time that my sister can remove the commode, just so that we can wheel the wheelchair behind her, lower her down, and then wheelchair her into the other room. Now, this is a wheelchair that you're supposed to use really outdoors. It's not designed for indoor. So it's another routine where I have to now pirouette my mother out of the wheelchair to get her into a riser chair. All of this takes away the fact that she's not exercising her legs. Do you see what I mean? And we've got another talk with the GP, I think, this week, Monday, Tuesday. Looking forward to that because this tablet is just a brain tablet. It's useless. It masks the problem. And we don't have the ultrasound on the leg until somewhere like the 10th or the 11th of November. So we're still away. So naproxen wasn't working. This amitriptyline tablet, the masking hasn't helped with the pain receptors. So yeah, we don't know what to do now. We're at a standstill till the ultrasound. But I'd like her to come off of amitriptyline. Terrible drug. Hate it. I used to be on it. Used to be used for depression as well, you know. I started to take it when my sciatica came back and my dad died. I couldn't be a pallbearer for my dad because I couldn't lift the coffin. My role in my dad's funeral was diminished to nothing. I basically sat down, listened to everybody talk. I couldn't get up and talk. And I had to then walk to the grave and be by myself talking to my dad before, you know, they all walked off. And that was the end of my dad's funeral, where my sister did a reading. My sister's husband was the pallbearer. It was all sort of stuff that was taken away from me. The only thing I did was I paid for the gravestone. I paid for the letters that went on the gravestone. It came to over $1,500 for that. I paid for that. And that's all I could do was be financial help. And I'll never forget that. I don't doubt I probably would have broken down trying to talk about my dad. In many ways, it was a beautiful service. All of his music that he wanted to be played was played. You know, I was next to my mum all the way through it. My sister being on the other side. And I saw a lot of people that I hadn't seen in years, you know, on my dad's side and on my mum's side. Funerals do bring people together, and then you don't hear from them again. So Yeah, very, very weird. But anyway, that's my mum. We've talked about work. From my point of view, yeah, the DVLA, what a pain in the arse. So, as promised, I left it some time. I think it was Wednesday. So it was longer than normal because I phoned on the Thursday or Friday last week to say, right, what's going on? And apparently, again, they sent a letter to me saying, you need to fill in this questionnaire. And I'm going, come on. What questionnaire can you give me? You've just had a questionnaire to the GPs, giving you the information. We want to know your sleep score. I said, they've told you my sleep score. Yeah, but you have to fill it in. I said, this is a process that you're going through. That's a mistake. What? I said, how long is this going to take? They said, well, we sent it in the post on the 2nd. Last week, after you spoke to us. You should get it within 10 days. I said, yes. Don't you see what I'm getting at? You've sent it in the post when you could email it or whatever. 10 days later, I get it. 10 days later, you get it back. Another 10 days to scan the damn thing. Then goes to the review team. Then what next? Do you see what I mean? It's Christmas. It's absolutely despicable. After speaking to this person on the phone, and I spoke very calmly with her, I said, do you know what? You'll notice that I haven't raised my voice. I said, you've got to understand I'm angry at the process and the procedure, and I will go to my MP, and you will be shamed, your department, in regards to this, because you're being cruel. You're being cruel to somebody that I can't help as a carer, and it's going to be in the news. Didn't make a blind bit of difference. They're not scared of that at all. But I said, I want to speak to your manager. So I spoke to her manager, came on, and I said, this is ridiculous. The last time I spoke to you about questionnaires, you said, even if it was sent electronically, you won't accept it until the paper copy comes through, which is a nonsense. If you think about it, the electronic method is supposed to speed things up, and you wait for the paper copy, regardless of whether you got the electronic one, before you do anything. She said, I'll send it to you electronically. I will make sure I search for it tomorrow, the next day, if you can fill it in that quickly, and I will get that addressed by the review team. I went, well, that's the best I can ask for, thank you. And I gave her a different email address. I gave her my work email address. I said, I don't think it's going to come through, but I'm not convinced that I'm receiving anything from you because I'm using a Yahoo or a Google account, one of those web-based ones. But my work one being a government one, it's probably going to reject it. But being as your government as well, I will give you it. So I gave it to her, and it came through at 5 o'clock. Now, I'm supposed to log out of work at 4, but I stayed on. Right, and it came through, and the next big problem was it was a PDF. Right, PDFs are locked, but I managed to unlock it. Right, so I used Word and a few other little tricks that I know. Edited it, put little X's in the boxes by using the draw box, believe it or not. And I had to use the draw box for my signature, but next to my signature that I had to draw with a mouse, because I haven't got anything else to do it with, because I've got a touch screen laptop or a touch screen monitor. I put my name in text to the right of it. The rest was all done with X's that were on the keyboard, so I marked the score. And I did tell the manager, I said, look, I could be an arse about this, and I could put no problems across all the boxes, right? And it'll come back 0, right? But being as you know what my score is, I will do it for how I am now, right? So if I feel like I'm dozing watching TV, I'll mark it, not a 0, right? Because you've only got 3 boxes. You've got 4 boxes, 0, 1, 2, 3. The third one giving you a score of 3, and if you got 6 or 7 boxes, you can get a score as high as 20 or something, right? So I marked it all up. I did say that when I'm watching TV, I'm likely to doze. When it says, am I likely to doze at the wheel, I obviously put 0. When it talks about if I was on my bed in the afternoon, lying down, am I likely to doze? I could have done that as a high mark. Yeah, because I'm lying on my bed and I'm fatigued after looking after my mum. But I marked it down as a 1. Yeah, likely to. And then when it says about reading books late at night, yeah, mark that as a 1. All that sort of stuff. I finally got a score that was much lower than before. It was 12 before. It was, I think it turned out to be 7. 6, I think it was actually. And that's because things have changed, right? And I told him that. And I sent it, and I didn't follow up the call until Friday. And this is where I got disgusted. I spoke to the lady, and I said, have you received it? She said, yes. And I went, right, has it been actioned? She said, yes, it went to the review team. I can see this. I went, right, well, that's good news. What's happening now then? Can I drive? We've sent a form to you to apply for your driving license because you have to apply for your driving license. I went, oh my God. I did this in September. Can you look at your notes, please? You're talking about a D1 and an SL1 form. It was filled in, and I filled it in twice. Can you look? She looked and she went, oh yeah, the person who reviewed it obviously didn't see that and has sent the forms for you to apply for it. And I went, right, send an you need to do something because I'm not waiting another 10 days. I haven't even received your form yet for the one that you've actually actioned, which I thank you for getting done so quickly, right? You know, you can see in the letters that I filled this in already. I've applied for it. Can you get that sorted? She said, I'll send an email immediately, but it's 4:45 at night and they go at 4, so they won't see it till Monday. And I went, okay, I'll leave it another couple of days. I'm disappointed. I should be rubber stamped now because you've already got the SL1 and D1 form. Right. She said she understood. So I said, but thank you for your time. Thank you for letting me know the information. The only thing I'm disappointed in is, again, I've got no email to say this is going on. Again, no text message to say this is going on. And again, you're sending things in the post, which takes days. You need to show that you know that I've ticked the boxes that tell you, please text me, please email me, please call me in regards to changes into my situation. So that's where we are with that. And that's my week. So yeah, we've gone into quite some bits. So I'll end that there and we'll move on now to shout outs. And there's a lot more this week. Like I say, whether it's YouTube's a logarithm, whatever it is, I will say this. Everything's healthy in regards to what I do on here, and I thank everybody for that. I've got so many people that watch this blog, and I've got healthy numbers for the other stuff that I come out with. And a big thank you to Steve for giving me something to take my mind off. I'm doing a collaboration with him, and it's been really fun. And I'm getting healthy numbers with that, and you know, it's absolutely brilliant. You know, I'm a small person, you know, channel that just does things for fun. And I want to partake my knowledge, which Ian Hill, the Ramblings, has always been a big believer that my knowledge is so high in regards to, you know, Doctor Who, science fiction, dystopian futures, 70s toys, DVDs, laser discs, VHS. All my mind through that period is pretty good. Oh, and I told him I learned so much about new stuff from Muckman and Cy Robinson and all of those people when we do our Wednesday stream, because modern films I'm less up with, and that's why I buy so much stuff, because there will be a time when I will be able to sit down and watch a lot of it. And I've got it in the highest format that's possible because I've missed it. So there are many reasons why I buy what I do. But it is an expensive hobby, and I've had to cut back, and that's why you don't see as much of that as possible. But I am slowly finding a little bit of time to do things. I'll be working on Steve's collaboration probably after this blog, if I've got time before my sister leaves, and then it gets out there. And I want to do another couple of film reviews and more of my gaming history. So those are 3 important things for me to do. And that means that whenever I finish, I should be able to get something done after my mum goes to bed, even to the point where if I get it all prepped, I can record it after work, after my mum, because she doesn't generally need my assistance much until the late evening when she wants to watch telly with me. But I know that the more I am away, the more things could happen to her. So I tend to cut down now the half an hour gap to 20 minutes max. So, it's like that. And trying to record something in 20 minutes, you could only do if you've prepped. You see what I mean? I can then work on the little screenshot and all of that sort of stuff when my mum's gone to bed and then upload it. Do you know what I mean? So it's not impossible, but it's just darn difficult. So I just want to give out a big thank you to everybody who watches this. Thank you for making this important to you. It's very, very important to me. And so a big thank you from me on that. But these are the people that have commented, that have looked at this and have left a message. Fantastic. And there's so many. Look, we've got Rocket Bunny, Steve's Gaming Part 2, Ian Hill The Ramblings, Wee Bob Art, Sandra Clark, Martroid, Muckman-Movies, Carl Todd, Colin Jones, a.k.a. Ponder, Tony York and Frank Holder. I mean, that's a lot. And each one is either going to leave a comment for me or even ask a question. So, absolutely marvellous. We might as well start with this questioning thing right now. I'm going to take another sip of water, though. Oh, by the way, when it comes to my health, thank you very much for anybody that asks. Yes, I've got some health issues and I've lost quite a bit of weight. I probably lost more weight because I've had my hair cut. That's a joke, by the way. But, I'm doing as much walking as I possibly can. And when I can't, I've got my treadmill working again. It's one of the reasons. But the other one is obviously stress related and my health. Some people that have come in to see me that haven't seen me in a long time, personally, that have seen me, they've said, my God, you've lost some weight. And I don't see it myself. I notice it a bit around here, but this has always been here. It's been there for years. But I think people have sort of like seen it here a little bit. The only thing I notice is possibly my hair going grey around the edges. You don't probably see too much of that, but I see it when I'm washing my hair and drying it and all that sort of stuff in the morning. But health is a funny thing. I went for my blood test and they haven't told me what the results are yet. So I'll probably follow that up on Monday. So, yeah. But less said about that. As far as I'm concerned, everything is about my mum. Everything else is about making sure my sister is not too stressed. Those 2 things are probably the most important things in my life at the moment. My sister not being stressed because she is by herself. Look, I mean, I'm not there now at the moment. Think about that for a moment, right? Before we go any further with that sort of stuff. And my mum, who every day degenerates. What we call it each day, the new norm. And that's how you have to look at it. So let's read out something. The first one's from Rocket Bunny. Thanks very much, Rocket Bunny, by the way. My God, you've read quite a bit. You've said quite a bit here. So hopefully it's going to be entertaining for you guys. It says, hi, Del. Hope you and your mum have had a better week this week. Been a bit of up and down with mine. Couple of days at home now as my sister takes on the care and taxi role for my dad this weekend. That's great. I wish my sister could do that, but she hasn't got a car and all of that sort of stuff. So I hear what you're saying regarding getting a new job under your circumstances. I had to turn down a very good job offer after a second interview a couple of weeks ago, as there is no way I could commit to travelling 5 days a week for a new job with my mum in hospital, so far from where my dad lives. I'm fortunate to own my house now. Yeah, and I don't. and have money from my redundancy, but it isn't going to last forever. And that's one of the things that, when I think, Rocket Bunny, you're my age or slightly below, I don't think you're older than me, we have to think about we're not that far away from retirement age, no matter whether the government ups it by another year or two. I'm going to have to get a mortgage, and I'm literally, and I do use that word correctly, got to come up with the money in half the time that you usually get a mortgage for. Yeah. So even if they've got the same rule set, which I haven't looked into, on 5.5 times your annual wage, you've got half the time to fill it in. So yeah, it's going to be tricky. Thanks for the feedback on season 13 Blu-rays. That's the Doctor Who one, by the way. I've watched Pyramids of Mars now and haven't seen issues on that one. I'll tinker with my settings if the jitter issue occurs again. Yeah, the jitter issue. What might be happening, this is another thing to check, if you've got an option that says upscale, turn it off. Turn it off. The processor that will be used to upscale something that's already Blu-ray and been upscaled could be the issue on jitter. I have it off. I mean, I have that setting off. I don't have it off. I'm not that fortunate to have a partner. But that could cause the issue. And if you think about it, it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? A Blu-ray that's already been upscaled from an old 70s show being put into a player that's upscaling again? No. Might not be wise to have that on. You continue. RE Planet Crafter. I see the Toxic expansion will be mid-November. Like I said, I think it's November 17th. So I'll get that on release. Yeah, I'm down for that. And we can see how it is together. I've had a quick log into my previous world to remind myself of some of the basics, but I'm not going to play it properly before then, as I want to keep it as fresh as possible, considering I completed the original Planet twice, once on my own and the other in co-op, and I completed it. There are 3 endings, and I purposely saved the point before I took off from the planet. Right, that's the end, by the way, to see the 3 different endings. So instead of just blasting off from the rocket and finding out what the result of that was, I looked to see what the result was based on the ancients that owned the planet. So I wanted to know that one. And the other one, I think, was to do with money. Can't remember quite. But there were 3 endings, and I saw all 3. So, yeah, I will do the same. It'd be interesting to go back and look at my world, because I ended it before they had vehicles that you could drive on your planet with. I was jet packing all around the planet when I was doing it. So yeah, you continue. I enjoyed your answers to the favourite toys question. Big Track was a rich kid's toy in our neighbourhood. Yeah, and it was here, and that's why I was so pleased when I got it. I went, wow. I couldn't have the cart that went behind it, but I remember that year I only got 4 presents. I remember that. Big Track was one of them. So I was a very lucky boy, if you see what I mean. My best mate had the Evel Knievel wind-up bike, which I thought was very cool. Yeah, that was many years before that, about 4 years before that. However, it made me think about the toys I did have and enjoyed. In the 70s, Scale Extric was a popular one for me. I couldn't have Scale Extric. I couldn't have a train set. Didn't have a big enough room. Didn't have a big enough area for me to build it into. And it was very expensive, like Meccano. My dad wouldn't buy me a Meccano set for years and years and years, even though I bugged him for one, because he always said, you're only going to get the basic set. It's very expensive, and all the things that you want to buy afterwards, you're never going to be able to afford with your paper round money, or, pocket money. So yeah, I never had those things. So I was lucky in the electronic age, and I was growing up to that age where a boy of my age, which is 10, 11, 12, is obviously going to be more intrigued with electronics than they are the stickle brick, Lego and Meccano stuff. But Scale Electric, always wanted one. There was one in particular I wanted. It wasn't the actual Scale Electric. I think it was called Hot Wheels or something like that. You put the cars, let's say, on the same tracks, but they had lights. They had the lights on it. And you could do night driving. And I never had that, but the boy over the road, his name was John. Yeah, John. I haven't thought about him for a long time. He had one. We used to go over there, and I used to like driving with the white car, the lights. He wanted the black one. But I did that because when we turned the lights off, I could see my car and the lights. And his was black, so all he saw was lights. So I thought I might have an edge here. But he always took the inner track, right? Now, I don't know if this is true because I didn't have a Scale Electric set myself, but is the inner track an advantage on Scale Electric? It's got to be, hasn't it? It's shorter. Maybe, though, it's harder to go round the bends because it's tighter. I can't remember, you know. I haven't thought about that. This is just stuff that's going through my mind. So in the 70s, Scale Electric was popular for me. We used to combine track pieces with my neighbour and make larger circuits and have championship races. I treasured my M23 James Hunt McLaren, what a car that was, and won many races with it. Lego, of course. Some of my earliest memories are building Lancaster bombers out of Lego with my dad, while my sister was born upstairs in my parents' bedroom in 75. That's giving away a bit of your age, I think, but don't think it does too much. But the only Lego I got, and it was once, was the Tektronix Lego. I saw this car with suspension and I wanted it. And I saved and saved and saved like Billio, and then built it. But at this particular time of my life, I was into electronics at school, and I was learning to solder and use non-soldered breadboards at work to do things like putting circuits in series and learning Ohm's law. So, yeah, I really didn't do much with that Tektronix Lego kit. Should have done, I suppose, wouldn't I? Bloody expensive. You talk of film music last week. And it's inspired me for a question this week. We know of your love of many of the well-known film composers of the last 50-odd years, such as Horner, William and Goldsmith. Oh, my God, yeah, but my favourite's De La Rue. And you can't go by without mentioning Bernard Herrmann and Ennio Morricone. Even later on, Vangelis. But however, you say, I wonder if you've found any younger composers of newer films which you think are going to create a similar legacy. Is it me? Or do newer films tend to use more popular artists than classical composers? Is the age of great film composers coming to an end when the oldest generation have all departed us? I'm interested to hear your thoughts and recommendations if you have any. And oh my God, something that I don't talk enough about really on Ian Hill's channel. But yes, of course. I don't follow the new ones that much, and I do believe there are some great composers out there. I've only been following about 3, and I had to write down the names because I'm terrible at pronunciation, so you'll have to excuse me. But one of them is Daniel Pemberton. Now, Daniel Pemberton came to mind for me because I was watching the Spider-Man cartoons, you know, after the success of the 3 Spider-Man films, you know, Homecoming and all of that sort of stuff. They did this cartoon, and it was one of the first cartoons to ever win an Oscar. And it's composed by Daniel Pemberton. And I thought that score was great. So he's not done that much, but what he has done is pretty good. It's modern. It's not my ideal take, but remember my tastes are Lalo Schifrin and Roy Budd, and that sort of stuff. So, yeah. But an obvious one is Michael Giacchino, or Giacchino. I can't pronounce it. Like I said, I have to write it down. So it's Giacchino, yeah. Gianccchino, yeah. And he came to mind because I really, really, really liked when I went to the IMAX cinema to see it, the rebooted Star Trek film. It didn't have anything like a Goldsmith or Alexander Courage, Star Trek 5 about it, or even James Horner with his 2 brilliant scores for Star Trek 2 and 3, or even Cliff Idleman, who did the 6th one, which I think is a fantastic score. Knocked it out of the park, Cliff Idleman did with the 6th one. And I think it was his first score. Very close to it. His second one was A Simple Twist of Fate, which is a lovely score. Oh my God, I cry sometimes when I listen to that music. Such a moving piece. But yeah, Michael Giacchino has done Star Trek. And I do listen to the composers that do things like Games of Thrones and stuff like that, the TV stuff. But they don't have those themes like we used to have in the 80s, you know, Knight Rider, Street Hawk, A-Team, Simon and Simon, all of those sort of scores, you know. And what about all the stuff like The Prisoner and Man in a Suitcase, and you know, the Captain Scarlet, UFO, and Space 1999, Barry Gray themes. I mean, brilliant scores. You hummed them. Now, can't remember the last time I hummed a comedy, sitcom score, science fiction score much. Nah, just not. I think The Expanse was the last one that hooked me a bit. Game of Thrones for definite. Game of Thrones was exceptional. Score for a theme for a TV show. Yeah. See, I'm trying to think of Walking Dead, and I don't think that's got particularly much. Breaking Bad was all right. Yeah. Anyway, last one. Now, again, I've got to try and read this out. It's Justin Hurlitz. Now, he came to mind because I was talking to a friend after I watched a film and bought a copy for him. And it was called Babylon. Very long film, but a lovely film. Babylon. And straight after that, I saw a film called, sorry, there's a call coming through, but I don't recognise the number, called First Man. First Man, it was a space film. And both of those scores I like, so I started to look at who this composer was and started to get interested in him. But I must admit, I watch a film like recent horrors, Terrifier and all of that sort of stuff, and they're nowhere near the scores that you saw in A Nightmare on Elm Street or Halloween or any of those. They just don't have that shock or, you know, emotion to them that I got when I was watching them originally. So yeah, it's one of those things where I go, it's a shame. But there's 3 for you. Daniel Pemberton, Michael Giacchino, Justin Hurwitz, I think his name is. So thank you very much. I hope that answers your question. And definitely looking forward to mid-November. He's put, until next week, Dell, all the best to you and your mum. Take care and better one. Thank you so much. So we'll move on now to my friend Ian Hill, who basically, by the way, kept apologising to me on Wednesday because he sent a comment to YouTube and it didn't stick. So I didn't read it. So I didn't know. And I told him, most people are putting placeholders now, and you'll always know if I've got it because I'll leave a heart and I'll leave a heart comment in a hope that that will keep the comment there. And I said, you've got nothing to be apologising for. Amount of people that don't every week do something, and that's perfectly fine with me. It's just I have to think of things on the spot and what to talk about. So anyway, I told him, don't be so bloody silly and start selling more fish fingers. Because I call him Captain Birdseye. But anyway, he's going to be very busy at Christmas because he'll be Santa, I'm pretty sure of it. But anyway, I'm sure he's laughing at all these comments. He's put this week. Hi, Delboy. Hope you and your mother are okay and things are stable for both of you. It's what you need. And I know life always seems to throw up new challenges. I hope you get this post this week. It seemed to disappear last week. We had another good Wednesday live, which I know we both enjoyed, and we did. I had a great time. If you're not subscribed to Ian, by the way, what the bloody hell is up with you is all I got to say, because he doesn't just cover films. You know, we're talking TV, Doctor Who, X-Files. He does music like prog rock and punk and all of that sort of stuff. He's a big David Bowie fan. I helped him when he was thinking about getting his collection up with Elton John, because he had just recently finished sort of like getting his Kate Bush collection, and he's a big fan of the Old Grey Whistle Test, as we both were. I watched the Old Grey Whistle Test. I thought it was a brilliant show. So what are you doing? Subscribe. Anyway, he said, my week has been okay, just the usual visits from the nurse, some good healing on my legs and feet. The pain has felt much more manageable. That's absolutely brilliant. I'm so glad to hear that. I've watched a lot of films as usual. The 2 downloads you sent me I enjoyed. The first was Casper from 1995. That was a fun piece of family entertainment, and it was good to see Eric Idle in it. The second was A Simple Twist of Fate, was the one I enjoyed the most, starring Steve Martin. It was a very touching story about him bringing up a baby girl that was abandoned. Yeah. Now, you'll probably understand, well, what are you sending stuff digitally for and all of that sort of stuff. We both sort of like love to talk about things, and he wants to know more about the history of my film watching. Casper was one of those films, and A Simple Twist of Fate, that moved me because of the score. Now, I think it was James Horner that did Casper. Simple Twist of Fate was Cliff Idleman, as I said. Both of them have got this element in it where there is a sad piece that's played, and it's what they call the theme, the main theme. Casper's got to have a theme for himself, regardless of whether there is the TV cartoon show that is the theme, right? The film has to have the boy that turned into a ghost theme. And it's a moving piece by James Horner. It happens at around about an hour into the film, where he explained how he died and how he stayed behind to look after his dad, who he said would be alone. And that's why he didn't pass over. Very moving piece. Regardless of it being a family film, it's got some very dark elements in there. And Cliff Idleman in The Simple Twist of Fate, I tell you, I loved that film so much and that score so much. When I went over to the States, I bought that on Laserdisc and bought the score and brought them back over, and they're still in my collection now, and they'll never go. Such a moving film, Simple Twist of Fate. It's a bit like Roxanne that Steve Martin did. Only he wrote this one, and he based it around a book called Silas Marnia, or Marnia, something like that. It's about a recluse. But anyway, a miser, yeah, a hoarder. So, yeah, so glad you like those. In the post yesterday, a Blu-ray of Weapons arrived. 2025 film, which I watched last night. This is one of the best films of the year, up there with Sinners. But Companion still remains my favourite. And I have to say, I've got Sinners, I've got Weapons, I haven't got Companion, believe it or not. I need to get that. Need to change that, don't I? Yeah. So my question this week is, which story from each of the 7 classic Doctors, oh my God, how long am I going to be here, best reflects their character? Oh, Jesus. All right, I'll try, and I'll try and be quick. So, William Hartnell, what would be a story that reflects the grumpiness, but also the edge that takes away the bitterness of this guy, that this Time Lord that we saw as sort of like being like our own grandfather? Well, you got to start looking at the mid to end of his tenure. And I think even though he's not in one whole episode, Maybe the 10th Planet would be a good one. The most moving piece I saw of William Hartnell was the second Dalek story, where he said goodbye to Susan. So it's a moving piece. It's a it's a used expression. It used it at the beginning of the fifth Doctor, the Five Doctors. It's absolutely fantastic. But I think the 10th Planet is the one that I'll go with that. Yeah. Anyway, so I was just thinking of those lines. You must go forth with all your beliefs. Yeah, there should be no tears, no anxieties. Just go forth with all your beliefs and prove to me that I am not mistaken in mine. Goodbye, Susan. And then he disappears. Very sad. Anyway, Tomb of the Cybermen is going to be my pick for Patrick Troughton, and I'll explain why on that one. It's the first story of probably his best season, but there's a moment in it where he talks to one of the companions, and he says that she said she was missing her father, and he says, I understand. He said, but that's the beauty, sort of like in our brain. When we want to think of our father, we can bring them in the front of our eyes and remember them, and then we can put them back again. And I thought that was a lovely, lovely thing to say. And of course, it's full of Patrick Troughton's mischief, where he sort of like sees this scientist trying to work out the logic circuits of this Cyberman's tomb experiment puzzle, and he's flipping the switches to fix it or make it not work. He's being a very mischievous person, and that's what Patrick Troughton was. He hid his intelligence an awful lot on purpose, without trying to show that it was on purpose. So I'm going to go with Tomb of the Cybermen. And a lot of my choices, I think, are going to be based on emotion. So when it comes to John Pertwee, who is my earliest memory of John Pertwee, by the way, when I was watching it the first time round, was the Spiders, Planet of the Spiders, his regeneration story. It's one of my earliest memories. I can see it vividly now, where he died and regenerated into Tom Baker's character, the Fourth Doctor. And I just remember that scene so much. You know, there was this guy lying on the floor and he disappeared, and this guy with curly hair and a big nose took over, and so much younger. And I was going, what's this? Don't understand. And that's because I don't remember the Patrick Troughton and William Hartnells. I wasn't born. Well, I was, but I wouldn't have remembered it at 1 or 2 or 3. You know what I mean? I mean, that's sort of like what we're talking about. But I am going to remember it at 5 or 6. You know what I mean? 7, that sort of age. So yeah, I'm going to mention, I think, again, Green Death. It's not my favourite story. Inferno is my favourite John Pertwee story, but that's for different reasons. Green Death again shows that Doctor who used action and gadgets, but it was also Katie Manning's The Companions last story, and you see him at the end toasting everybody after the success of what was going on in that particular story. And he got into he did a toast, sort of like raised his glass, slid out the back, got into Bessie, and drove off with it's turning into dusk. And it's that emotional, I'm saying goodbye to you and going away to probably reflect, I should think. But it's the action sequences and the gadgets and all of that sort of stuff that also reflect John Pertwee's character. So I'm going to mention that, the Green Death. And then we get to Tom Baker and the Fourth Doctor, and it's really hard, this one, because he did it for 7 years. And I really love a lot of his stories, Genesis of the Daleks, Legopolis, his end story is, I think, a pretty good one. A lot of people don't think so, but I think so. But I'm going to go with Pyramids of Mars. I've just seen this just recently. I could have gone with any. I could have gone with Hand of Fear, Pyramids of Mars, Genesis of the Daleks. I could have gone with Brain of Morbius. There's so many, that I could have gone with. But I'm going to go with Pyramids of Mars. And the reason is that Sarah Jane is still in it. She gets trapped on Mars in one of the Egyptian testing ones, which is brilliant. But it's also got him deducing what's going on and then using his high Time Lord type science to diminish a character that could have destroyed the Earth. So you've got this pure, oh my God, what if Sarah Jane dies type moment where he's trying to help. And you've got the science behind how to get rid of a threat to Earth. And it's a classic great story anyway. But I think that sums up Tom Baker's role more so than later on ones with K9 and all of that sort of stuff. Don't get me wrong, when I was a kid, I loved K9. I look at it now and I go, what the hell, this dog? Jesus. Anyway, so we move on now to Peter Davison. And you could class him as my doctor, because I was at that age where the stories, you understand the adult nature of some of the tones and the stories, where the other ones I was pre-teen. And so you could turn around and say he was my doctor. But for long periods of time, I always said John Pertwee was mine, or Tom Baker, because those were the ones I was watching as a kid, which is the age I should be watching it at. And you've got like the 5 Doctors, but that's not going to express Peter Davison's one very much, because you've got other Doctors, and he alters therefore based on those people. It's just a fun fan thing, but it's a great story. And I could have chosen so many other stories that I liked at the beginning. I mean, Castrovalva, the first story, is not particularly that interesting. But I'm going to go, and I could have gone with Caves of Androzani here, but that was his regeneration story, and I've already talked a little bit about regeneration stories. They're too powerful to say that's the character that the Doctor is. I'm going to go with Resurrection of the Daleks, and I'll explain why. Resurrection of the Daleks is very important. Probably more than the other Sideman story, which is, by the way, bloody important, because Adric died. A character that you saw die on screen, and it's the first time that the Doctor's main theme or end closing credits didn't have any music to it. That's how prominent it was. But I'm going to go with Resurrection of the Daleks because Tegan left, and it was a turning point for Peter Davison's Doctor, because not only was he there with his high science and his dilemma of killing Davros, but Tegan left because it was becoming less fun. She said, I've got to go. It's not fun anymore. And the stories in that particular season were getting very, very dark. And they were death or dilemmas of such high importance that you couldn't, the deducing and helping these of people was becoming more prominent in regards to not being fun, right? Not the fun of trying to work out something had gone away, and the importance of making sure you stayed alive and other people stayed alive was more important. So I totally got that. And he didn't want her to leave, but she went anyway. And he went back into his TARDIS, took off, and she came back, running back, but didn't get back in time to change her mind. It must have been very difficult when you have to say goodbye in the way that she did. But I think it shows the Doctor's twee side. It was, I'm the Doctor, I'm the person who must take control, I must help these people, I must... all of that sort of stuff, but then go against his own beliefs of no killing, no guns, all of that sort of stuff, to the point of a companion leaving on such a sad note. And I think that sums up Peter Davison a lot. So, I'm now going to talk about Colin Baker, and there are less stories to talk about here. And I could have chosen another Cyberman story, because they seem to be quite strong, these early Cyberman stories. I've mentioned them a couple of times now, Tomb of the Cybermen, and all that sort of stuff. There was a slack side during Tom Baker's era, and I don't think John Pertwee even had a Cyberman story. No, I don't think he did. So I'm going to talk about, with Colin Baker, the two Doctors. And I'm going against the grain here, because I just mentioned you shouldn't really mention a story that's got another Doctor in it, because it changes the way that you are. But I'm going to go with that one, because it did bring out what I thought was Colin Baker's fun side, when he started off in such a dark mode, and he wanted to move away from that, because he never really wanted it. He wanted it to be gritty, but he didn't want a side where he killed his companion and all of this sort of stuff. I mean, it was a nonsense. But he was more a William Hartnell character, a grumpy, arrogant role. And I thought that the two Doctors brought out the running around and all of that sort of thing, and the Time Lord type bit in it, and time travel, should I say, in it. And it was fun to see Patrick Troughton's last attempt at being the Doctor before he died, and them arguing and being bitter was quite good, because I thought it was like Patrick Troughton talking to William Hartnell when he was talking to Colin Baker. And I'm pretty sure he thought to himself, if you're more William Hartnell than me, then I'm going to go against that gruff nature that you've got. So I thought that was quite good. And the last one, Sylvester McCoy, you have to look at the last parts, the last two seasons. And I'm going to go with Curse of Fenric, because of my love of horror, which is great, but also that mystery behind the Doctor that they started to bring in. I mean, in a story before Curse of Fenric, you had things like Battlefield. He was apparently looked upon as being Merlin. So he'd been there before, and he'd sort of like invented himself as being Merlin, which I thought was quite funny. And in the season before it, and you saw again the Silver Nemesis in particular, again you saw this, who are you, Doctor? And he'd go, shh, because it's all a big mystery. He was called the Professor. She kept calling him the Professor, Ace did. So I think Curse of Fenric shows off all of those sort of things of his character, probably more than anything. Battlefield didn't. Don't think that story did much. And of course the last story where he was on the cat planet, it was a good, okay story. It's a story with the Master. I wouldn't have liked it to have ended there. So I think that's it, isn't it? My God, I've spent an awful lot of time there, Ian, and thanks very much for your question, but I must move on. My God. I'm hoping there aren't too many more questions now, because we're really going into the hour a bit too much. But salute, my friend, and please, if anybody, please do subscribe. I have to have some more water after that. I said I could talk to them about Doctor Who, didn't I, for bloody hours? And I probably turned everybody off. But here we go. Steve's Gaming Part 2, my friend Steve. You little bastard, fucking hate you, little shit. That's my salute. I have to do my salute. It's the law. It's got to be done. He's put, hi Del, great blog again. So thanks for that. I know it's none of my business, but I'm really sickened at how your sister and her husband treat you. Yeah, I've mentioned it before. This is a diary, right? And it's about how I feel at the time. And I hope I've corrected things by saying my sister is a great carer, right? And he does mention about treating me. And that's sort of like the emphasis of what I've coming across. But we work so well, we put our differences aside and we collaborate towards my mum. And I love my sister to bits. I keep going up to her and I say that you're doing really well. You know, her name's Tracy. Because you do. And I'm in awe of what you do for mum. And she'll turn around and say, it's what we do. And I go, yeah, but it's nice sometimes to be personally thanked, isn't it? And then she goes quiet. And this is where I go, this is the bit where I say, we do work towards mum. And when it comes to personal confidence building, she doesn't. She doesn't do that. She can't do that with me. Something blocks that. So, you know, I get it. This looks like it's bordering on abuse to me, but it's not. It needs to be stopped. It does, but it only happens when things flare up. This crap is the last thing you need right now, and it is. And I can't imagine how annoying and upsetting it is, and it is. I mean, I can go into, sometimes I come into my room, go into my toilet, and I start to weep, cry. It affects me. But I also know that then when I come out of there and I have to go and see my mum, I see my mum with a big smile on her face, with my sister looking after her. And it breaks that why are you looking at things for yourself? It's not about you. And that's where I go with that. Anyway, what else can I say? Oh, yes. Buzz Aldrin's wife passed away this week, which was really sad. Oh, my God, I didn't know that. Yeah, my God, I didn't know that. While I remember, I hope the end is in sight of getting your license back. Well, you now know where I am with that. Do you know what? I've got my... You've put fingers crossed, and I've got my fingers crossed because my car's been sitting out there now for 10 or 11 weeks. So I charged the battery up Saturday. I actually got in the car, first time, pushed it back with my feet because I didn't want to start the engine. And I wanted to make sure the brakes hadn't seized, so I pushed it back with my feet and they hadn't. And then lifted the bonnet up and charged it for 6 hours. I've got a funny feeling things might be round the corner, and I wanted to show that by making sure that the battery was charged up, because obviously the battery will be pretty much flat. And then the first thing I'll have to do is take it to a garage and put the right air pressures in. Christ knows what they're like. So on to the question. Which Blackadder series is your favourite and why? Wow. That's a hard one, actually. And I think, and it does, by the way, change between two particular seasons. And I think most people will know. It flips between 2 and 4, but I've watched 4 now more times than 2. Just, right? I used to watch them in tandem. After I watched 2, I watched 4. 3 was all right. First one was underrated, believe it or not. Had Brian Blessed in it and Peter Cook. Great. But it wasn't the Blackadder that we saw in the second one, and the second one was just out of this earth. I mean, it battered it out of the park. I could quote lines from it. And Tom Baker was in it as well in the second one. But I go with the fourth because I learnt after watching Blackadder. I watched World War One and sort of read up about it and looked at it and got involved with what World War One was all about, and it aided me with enjoying the sort of like mockery comedy that they brought into that particular period of time, World War One, and it didn't disguise the emotion of everything that was going on in World War One with the final episode and going over the trench, and then you see the poppy field. So as far as I'm concerned, Blackadder's 4th season, Blackadder Goes Forth, is my favourite, I think. Yeah, I'll go with that. I'll tell you what, 6 months ago, it'd probably been the second one still, you know. It's one of those things. You then continue. On another note, I visited my mum tonight. Her Alzheimer's is getting worse, and quite frankly, it's soul-crushing to see your mum in a state like that. My stepdad is trying his best to deal with it, but it's awful. All the best, and give my love to your mum. And of course, and you probably understand now, Alzheimer's, dementia, 2 sides of a coin. It's horrible. The vascular in front of it scares me. The dementia scares me. But, you know, it's one of those things where you live with it. But I just want to say right now, Steve's got a fantastic channel, right? And we're collaborating together, trying to... I think he thinks I'm trying to make it frustrating and nasty for him. It's not my intention at all. And he's going, I'm going to get you back for this. And it's sort of like it's going to turn into a fight type things. Right. You give me such a corker of a crappy game, I'm going to give you even worse, you know. And that's what I think what makes it fun, right? So last time, if you want to go and look at his channel, I gave him a game called Cliffhanger. Now, I gave him that game for 2 reasons, right? I think it was 2 reasons. Yeah, it might be more. 2, though. You don't see it very often being played on streams because it's a longish game if you're in regards to how you die in the game, right? Because most of the time the game helps you and it doesn't make you die. It sort of saves you so that you can do it again. But it's a frustrating game because it's a timing game. But once you've learnt all of the different traps, there's nothing to go back to. So I wanted him to play it just the once. He'd never had it. I looked for games I have not seen him play, and for definite, he hasn't seen me play. Right, that's the important thing. If I've seen his channel and I've watched him play a game, and you give it to me, I sort of semi-know what to expect. Right, it's very difficult to do that because I watch his channel like a hawk. Unless he's on Twitch, and then I don't. So I look forward to his next game because I might not have seen it because he might have played it on Twitch and I haven't seen it then. And if it is a game that he's played and I've seen it, hopefully it's one from way back because I can't remember everything. But it doesn't matter anyway. It's a matter of, does this game need exposure? Does this game fit in with what I think will either frustrate or I'll see a lot of deaths? Or is it a game I want him to enjoy? Right? And a game he might not have seen. And there will be ones where I'm going to give him something. It won't be Star Raiders, his favourite, but it will be something similar that I think, oh wow, yeah, I think he'd enjoy that. And I don't think he's played it, and there we go. And I'll be doing that. I don't know when, because at the moment I'm enjoying him dying, you know, in games. Or being frustrated or swearing, right? Because that's what happens in these games. We all go, oh, bollocks, or something like that, right? Excuse my French there. But that's what we do. So, Steve's Gaming Part 2, go subscribe. Go. What a guy this guy is. He's such a nice guy. My God. Should have far more people looking at his stuff. And I think he'd probably say the same about to me. But I always look at it that he's far more important, far more up on things. And the only difference between him and I would say, is I'm a bit more tolerant. I won't say things like I hate games with timers in, I hate wings when you have to press up on joysticks, all of that sort of stuff. I might mention I dislike them, but I won't, go down that route too much. Do you know what I mean? But I still keep it pretty much edgy and turn around and say whether a piece of crap is a piece of crap. But anyway, go over there. You need to. Simple as that. And salute, my friend. And we'll move on to Wee Bob Art, who has put, and he's got a great channel as well. This is a guy who's an artist. He drew me a picture, and I was ordering a frame up until the point where things really went out of control with money in regards to getting my mum something. But I'd chosen it. I'd chosen the colour of it. I'd chosen the glass with the ultraviolet light protection on it, and then things happen. But anyway, he's got an art channel, and he's got things about films that he likes to discuss, and his love of pinball and MAME and all of that sort of stuff, his gaming and that. So anyway, he's put, here we go, great to listen again. I watched The Quick and the Dead for the first time yesterday and really enjoyed it. What a film Quick and the Dead is. I love that film. Gene Hackman knocks it out of the park. But anyway, I think you spoke about programming on a tiny screen back in the day. I did. I had a 5-inch bloody screen. I used to have a clock radio TV with a tiny screen. It was one of those type things, by the way, and programmed my Spectrum on it somehow. Took yesterday off work, but my wife is working night shifts, so I'm having to be quiet during the day. And that said, it's been nice to be off work after so many days working. Yes, and if I remember rightly, you got a big sort of section where you can probably do those things that you love, and I hope that's what you're doing. You deserve so much good time for yourself. All the best to you and your family. But the question for next week, I watched a movie yesterday called A Quiet Earth. Oh, I know that, yes. It is an 80s movie. It is. And I wasn't expecting much. However, it is pretty decent. And the effects used seemed quite big budget for what I thought was going to be a B movie. Yeah, anybody who hasn't seen A Quiet Earth, it's an 80s film. It's directed by, I think, someone called Jeff Murphy. Is that his surname, Murphy? Anyway, he directed Young Guns 2 and Free Jack. But A Quiet Earth was a science fiction one, a sort of like, it's not a dystopian film, it's a disaster film. That's right. It's sort of a sci-fi disaster film. And it reminded me a bit of The Last Man, or I Am Legend, or Omega Man. Reminded me a bit of that, because you follow a character and he thinks he's the last person left after this disaster occurred. And there's a shock ending at the end, very much reminiscent of Planet of the Apes ending, shock ending. So I won't ruin it for you, but there is a bit of a shock ending. And I liked it so much. This was back in the day where I was eating films. I mean, I was basically just swallowing them up. That I wanted to know what it was sort of like based around. And it's based around a film called The World, the Flesh and the Devil, which had, I think, Bogart in it. And I saw that film just once, and so I can see the themes, but I couldn't see still everything that was in that film in The Quiet Earth. But anyway, I'm digressing a little bit here. The Quiet Earth, a great film. Definitely go and watch that. It's about mid-80s. He's put, anyway, have you seen it? So you know I have. If not, has there been a movie, perhaps more recently, with a low budget, but you thought they did well with the effects? Well, that one would be the Creator. That one with the robot in the shape of a young child and a big war that's going on. I think it's called The Creator, something like that. It looked like it had the same effects budget as Dune and Dune 2, but had half the budget. It was made, it looked like you see, some of these big films, they have budgets of like 200 million. This one had, I think it was just over 100 million. So you could consider it to be quite high, but it's all effects. And from that point of view, it had half the budget. right? And I think they did incredibly well with the money that they had. It's got a bit of a muted colour palette for my liking, but you know, very dusty orange sort of stuff. But it's a good film, definitely worth watching. But you've put one that springs to mind for me is Godzilla -1. Oh my god, why didn't I say that? Yeah, Godzilla -1. Man in a rubber suit still as Godzilla. You know what I mean? It really was low budget, which I believe was low budget, but geez, the effects were fantastic, and they were. Wow. It looked just like the Kong versus Godzilla that Hollywood's done, but this is the original, going back to how Godzilla was made. And it's a man in a suit going over a city, and swiping his arms and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, it is low budget and it's fantastic. It looked like it was done in 2024, when it came out. And he's put all the best wishes to me. Thank you so much. And to you, my friend, salute. And like I say, he's got a channel. Please go over there. Ever interested in digital art or want to know a little bit about films and if you like community questions, it's another thing he does really well. Go over there. I'm like the eye of a hawk, listening out for when he's done something. But because things of like his don't come up in my channel, my YouTube alert box, and it really annoys me when that happens. So salute, my friend, and we'll move on to Sandra Clark, who's just put one line. She put, "Hi Dal boy, I just wanted to say I got my Switch 2 back yesterday." Yes, and I was so happy. I put, "Wonderful news, congrats. I hope to hear from you what games you're going to play and your future purposes." But then she followed it up a couple of days later, and it's got, "I am now so livid as my screen has gone again. The same problem. I'm so very mad. My hubby is telling me to contact Citizens Advice about it rather than send it back to Nintendo again. I might do that, but I'm flaming angry about all of this." And I would be. It just upset me when I heard that. You get something that they should actually do a 24-hour test on these things. When we used to build PCs, we used to turn them on and see and keep them on for 24 hours to make sure that heat and everything was okay with these things. And I've got a funny feeling they had that. It was at the back of the pile. They pulled it up. They did this, that, the other to the screen. They probably even just changing it, the screen over, and then send it back to you with hardly any testing done whatsoever. And there's probably a capacitor gone. And that's the danger point, you see. They won't do the tests that you see on YouTube with these people that say, YouTube fix-it guy or whatever it is, right? They'll get multimeters out and oscilloscopes and all sorts of stuff, the soldering iron, see them working and all that, and they'll recap it and all of that. They won't do that at Nintendo. They should have sent you a new one, as far as I'm concerned. After that length of time, void that warranty, get a new one, and a new 12-month warranty. I wouldn't have been happy or safe with it that it was in their hands for 2 months. 2 months of my warranty has gone. Handing me back the same device. Nah, bollocks. Made me really angry. So salute, Sandra, and I hope that situation gets changed. And I do hope you keep in touch with what games, like I was saying, and because I'd like to know. I might be able to pick up some games that you're buying and understand why they're good in that. So salute, and we move on to my friend Martroid, who's put, "Totally with you on that, Del. A movie score is like the secret sauce that makes everything taste better. Imagine 2001: A Space Odyssey without those epic classic pieces. I mean, it's like watching space wallpaper. Give me goosebumps just thinking about it. And then bam, silence. Suddenly it's like the universe itself is holding its breath. Brilliant stuff." Yeah, and I can't agree enough. A composer needs to know when to shut up and then when to be quiet and sort of like whimsical, and when to be bombastic, So that's what I think is probably missing from young scorers. It's almost a little bit. Now, I'm just going to mention here that Mainmeister was on, and he was talking about how we use and are an awful lot, and I do the same. You'll notice in the way I talk that I go and he said it was because we fill things with silence. We don't like silence, and I think modern composers are a little bit like that. Only my and ahhing is me in my brain thinking of what the next line's going to be. It's not a silence thing. Just there's silence. It's to me, it's I'm going and then and like this because my brain is jolting me forward to something else, and that's where that comes in for me. That's just me. I do believe some people do and are because they're don't like silence. And I have to say, you know, I don't like silence, especially in an argument. You know what I mean? It's like one thing after another, and it's almost then like the kitchen sink is being thrown at you. So, see, I went there then, because I'm thinking now what the next thing I'm going to talk about. So, totally agree with you, Martroid, and salute, my friend. Thanks very much for that fantastic comment, and it makes people think, why, just out there to the world that's looking at this, name a film and a score that wouldn't be the same without the score, and then tell me, are there bits in the film where silence is needed? Something like Alien might be one, or let me think. Well, there's obviously Star Trek the Motion Picture, and other ones. A Simple Twist of Fate. I've talked about that earlier. Georges Delarue's Interlude, and you've got. See how I'm thinking. Morricone's Once Upon a Time in the West, or The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, even. Yeah, so much. Roy. I mean, what about Get Carter and Dirty Harry, Lalo Schifrin? Wow. Just look at those. You'll see that there are bits where there's music and then bits where you need the dialogue and the quiet. Anyway, we move on to Muckman-Movies. There's a community question out to you, but I haven't done it as a community question video. Maybe even people have gone past this and won't even have listened to it. But we move on to Muckman-Movies, and here's another fantastic channel who did a live stream last Sunday, and I tried to big it up as best as possible, but I really meant I want people to watch it, because you only learn about horror films from guys that talk about it like they did on Sunday, right? And they were talking about specific films, but they were open to questions, right? So I asked a couple of questions, like biggest jump scare, all of that sort of stuff, boring stuff. But what they actually came out with when they were talking about the films, you can see the passion in it. But anyway, he's put, "Hi Dow Boy, sorry to hear about your challenging week. I know what it's like trying to care for an ailing mother, so my thoughts are with you. I also know what it's like when family members start thinking about inheritance, etc. It can really get ugly. Hoping your relationship with your sister will remain strong, and it will. Absolutely. I've got no doubts about my sister. One bit. Thanks for promoting my live stream, Dowboy. Ian and I had a great time discussing the horror films we had chosen. Lots of nice pickups there, by the way. He's talking about my stuff now. My Superman steelbook arrived too, but I'm not impressed with the Weapons steelbook, though it's very dull. But that Rocky Horror Picture Show steelbook looks quite nice. Don't get your Rocky Horror photos out if you want to keep your subscribers." And I have to turn around and say, yeah, I'd probably lose them. But to be quite honest, I don't really think about subscribers anymore. Again, Mainmeister was talking about subscribers earlier on. And I'll tell you what, I'd love to have his numbers. But at the end of the day, he also taught me something where he said, is what you're doing fun? And would you do it anyway? And I have to answer yes to both of those things. So all those people that I don't get the people that actually sort of like put a thumbs down and don't leave a comment, but I've mentioned that before, because actually what you're doing is you're doing me a great favor, because you're building my logarithm. So thanks. In a way, I don't even look at that much anymore, so there you go. Thank you, Salute, my friend, and Muckman-Movies. What a great channel. Very much films orientated, but does do a little bit about music. He's always prominent in Ian Hill, the Ramblings video when we do our live stream, because he likes to ask us questions. More probably to Ian than to me. I think that's the right thing anyway, because I'm sort of there as a sort of like comic relief, I think, really. They want me to rant or talk about soundtracks or whatever when things get a bit lull, but Ian's watched a lot more of the films between 2000 and 2025. I've watched more before 2000, and therefore I've got some input when it comes to things like The Quick and the Dead, Once Upon a Time in the West, all of that. But again, I haven't watched many foreign films, so when they start bringing out stuff I might have a little bit of knowledge on, like Django, that sort of stuff, it won't be as prominent as the mainstream Hollywood stuff. But I was there when The Sting and all of that sort of stuff was coming out, so I'm happy with my position as the lowly second half of Ian Hill, the Ramblings. And I say that with tongue in cheek. Ian, thank you very much for having me there. You know I couldn't survive without it. So salute, my friend. Excelsior, as I always put. And we'll move to Carl Todd. And Carl, let's see what Carl Todd's put. He's put, "Hi Del, I hope you and your mum had a better week. I'm out with my wife, so just a quick comment this time. I spent time organising my films yesterday. It's one of those jobs that takes a surprising amount of time. So my question this week is, if you had the room with lots of shelving, how would you organise your collection? Would it just be alphabetical? Maybe different sections, such as Marvel section? Or maybe organised by studio? Sorry, I have to go now. All the best to you and your mum." And I tell you what a fantastic question, because I don't think that far ahead, because I haven't got shelving or anything. And my collector's software that I use, my database, allows me to put it into any grouping I want, like by studio, by director, by alphabetical, by TV, by movie, by year, by price, all sorts of stuff, right? But I've got a funny feeling I'd probably do it by studio, and then alphabetical in studio. But there's so many people that do it by distributor. I've always wondered this. They call them boutique labels now, but I always knew them as Paramount, Warner, and 20th Century Fox and Disney and that sort of stuff. And these boutique labels, they're distributors. They're like Shout Factory, Arrow, Vinegar Syndrome, all of those. They're just in print, yeah. They're all distributors, and they're distributing films by Paramount, by Warner, and all of that sort of stuff. So I just look at it and go, I wouldn't do it by distributor. I wouldn't know where half of my stuff goes to unless you look at the back of the box and you see that Paramount made it and Paramount distributed it. So it definitely wouldn't be done by boutique label. That's all I'm saying on that. Distributor, I call them. So we'll end that there. But it's I'll tell you what, it's very tailor-made to however you want to do it. And I can totally understand why people put Arrow videos together and all of that sort of stuff. It's just not how I would do it. And the reason I say that is I can understand it, because when you put all the Arrow ones together, the boxes seem to be about the same thickness all the way along. Or Shout Factory or Film Vault, all of those. But even then, they're not always that way. You still get the thin ones, normal DVC size boxes. So I look at it that it's wherever you want to put things. You could do it by sci-fi, then comedy, then drama, then western. You know, you could do it like that. You know, I fancy a western, I'll go over to the western shelf. You know, so each their own. Alphabetical is easy though, isn't it? I mean, I want to know where Once Upon a Time in the West is. It's in the O's, isn't it? I mean, my God, how simple is that? Rather than it's in the westerns and it's about second shelf down because it's in the O's, and it came out by Paramount or Universal or whatever it is, and so it's going to be in the Paramount section of the Warren of the westerns. In the director's area of Sam Leone, and it's in the O's. I mean, bloody hell. Just put it in alphabetical. Yeah. So, interested in that one. Thank you so much, Carlton. Salute. I've got to have a sip of water now before this one. God. And this is from my good friend Colin Jones, a.k.a. Ponder. Again, fantastic channel he's got. So much stuff on there. He does a blog like me, a Vblog they call them these days. A bicycle, what's happening on the roads type thing, and of course he does lots and lots of stuff in regards to computers, retrospective on games, high score challenges, and so knowledgeable in regards to computers in general, you know, networks, how bus speeds work, all of that sort of stuff, which is my forte, if you see what I mean, in regards to my history of working in computers. But anyway, what's he put this time? He's put, looking after parents in their later years used to be very common. This doesn't make it any easier, of course. Not sure if the title of Prince could be removed from Andrew, but he could certainly be removed from the civil list. I'm sure he won't be. I'm sure he won't go broke, he's saying. Edit. Boy, was I wrong on that one. Carrying on, DVLA has gone beyond taking the piss now. All caused by a doctor you don't know being overreactive. Exactly. The situation with your sister does worry me. Who does actually own the house? My mum does. Also, you may not own the house, but it is your home regardless. It always seems to be on a knife edge, and that's the issue. Yeah, it's my mum's house. I look at it then as being the main proprietor, but I don't own it, which means I have no say, and there is no power of attorney. But that's all stuff that we talked about last week. Don't need to talk about that. Your mum is definitely the most important person right now, sending my regards, and she is, and she's the most important in my sister's life as well. I think the biggest thing about Christmas presents until a few decades was the number of batteries we had to buy. Yeah, didn't we all? I remember my dad, you know, as I said, he bought these C-cell batteries. He might as well have just bought a bloody truck and, you know, a shed full of them and put them out the back. The amount of things I needed. We had both Starbird and Intruder and regularly staged space battles. I'm so glad about that. Not many people talk about Starbird. It was one of my favourite toys. It really was. I had Stretch Armstrong and Stretch Monster and Hulk busting out the rage cage and all that sort of stuff. But, yeah, Big Track is amazing. Mine was played often until one of the axles snapped. It never worked right after that, even with gluing. Yeah, it was plastic. It had a membrane keyboard on top. It's probably one of the reasons why I had a ZX80 and a ZX81 and didn't go for a Spectrum and had a VIC-20. Always wanted a VIC-20. As soon as I saw what it looked like, as soon as I saw the keyboard, I went, that's my machine. That's the machine I want. And there we go with that. As for Evel Knievel, it was a high torque primer with plastic gears, doomed to failure from the start. Great fun while it worked though. It was. I mean, if you actually saw that big red wind-up handle and you actually took that apart and you saw where the handle went in, it was lots of white gears. High torque. It was like large against medium to smaller. which then powered a roller, and then it had gears inside the bike, and then you had a release button. Simple as that, really. That's my memory of it, because I remember my friends dropping his red-handled one, and the side smashed off, and I saw the white gears. Regarding the bills, it's the same every month, but this month payday, it's Halloween itself. Yeah, it is 31st. It was. Got to love beans on toast, you have. Oh, I love beans on toast. Stress can be a major health issue, as we all know. I have been through bullying, so I can empathise there. After my Sega, about the Sega R360, only a few games ran on that, most notably G-Lock, and I think the occasional Afterburner. Afterburner was the one that I knew. It also required an attendant to ensure the player was safely seated, a very high maintenance cabinet. Space Harrier was on a hydraulic deck, but not the R360, no, but this particular video ported the Space Harrier into this R360. In fact, he ported most of the Scalar 16 boards into it from the way it was worded, and that's what I was trying to get across, Colin. So that's the reason why I mentioned that. But yes, you're quite right. Space Harrier was on a hydraulic, and I remember going on that. Considering the full keyboard, I think the A1200 is good value. I won't be getting one because I have the real A1200, which is souped up with a Pi Storm 32 Lite. Yeah, you would not need it. The Spectrum is just under £90, by the way. Yeah, I didn't buy that because I got very little nostalgia for the Spectrum. But the more Steve puts Spectrum games towards me, and the more I watch 20th Century Gaming and so forth, the more I put my Mister on, I seem to be going back to the Spectrum. I'm seeing a lot of stuff that I like. I don't think it will ever change. The nostalgia's gone. I missed that nostalgia because I had one for 6 months. 6 months. That's all I had it for. My friend had one, but he came round here to play on the Commodore, and I didn't go down to see him too much. I think it was more to do with the fact that he lived in town and I lived on the outskirts of town, and my mum's boss was the son, if you see what I mean. The son, that my mum reported to the parents, this son that I got to know. So, yeah, I went round very, little, but I did go round. He was always playing Jet Set Willy, Manic Miner, Trash Man, Jetpack. And when he came round to my house, when I had my VIC-20, we played Jetpack on that. We used to keep turning round and deliberating which one was better. Obviously, the Spectrum one is, but the VIC-20 one, wow, what an achievement. I mean, it really is a top-notch game. You wouldn't think the VIC-20 could do it. So anyway, RE Rocky Horror cosplay, you spoil sport. These are not going to be shown. My question, what is the strangest name your family has ever given a pet? I think for me that would be a cat named Dink, after some song lyrics. That's an interesting one because we had a dog that protected us, my sister and I, when we were both in the pram, and its name was Rex, and it was an Alsatian, but it was put down. I think it attacked someone which was coming too close to the pram, and it was a farm dog, so it was very protective. So I don't remember that dog, but it was an Alsatian. On the farm we had lots of dogs. The one that I remember the most in my childhood was one that my uncle had called Patch. And next door, they had a dog which was a Springer Spaniel called Dylan. That was lovely, that dog. So lovely. They treated it bad. Well, the owner treated it bad. I took it for walks and that because it was always stuck behind a gate wanting people to play for him to play with him, and I used to chuck a ball to the back and he used to bring it to me and play tug of war, getting it out of his mouth, and then I'd chuck it, and I was there for half an hour doing that, and then when I left he used to put his head to the side like that, you know, as don't go, I want to play. So that upset me every time. It was heartfelt. But you're talking about our animals. We didn't. So the only ones I remember was our two cats when I was a pre-teen, called Snowy and Candy. They're not unusual names. I had a cat called Rigsby, but it had that name already. And we've got a cat that comes in now that's a stray, and it's called Thomas. But that's because we don't like its real name, which is Angel, after Angel from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Who knew, right? But my sister and I, we always talk about the dog that we owned that died at the age of about 13, 14. It was the family dog. It was a Shetland sheepdog, which is a little collie. It's a very small collie. And it was called Ringo, right? And that's because it had a very pedigree name. When you get a pedigree dog, they give you a certificate to show you the pedigree. And the last name was Star. It had a middle name like Montague and all of this sort of stuff. And I know for a fact that in that car, driving back after we'd picked it up, because we picked it up from a place 70 miles away, that I was eating a packet of salt and vinegar Ringos. And it just snapped. Basically, we called the dog Ringo. Ringo Starr. See? Who knew, right? Drummer. Beatles. Ringo Starr. So that's the one that I think has got the most unusual name of what we had. Snowy because it was white. Candy because it was a tabby. You see what I mean? Rex, wow, there's nothing unusual in there. There's the Rigsby. Unusual because that's the name of the character, not the cat in Rising Damp, but it was called Rigsby. So there you are. I hope that answers the question. Thank you so much, my friend, and brilliant. Moving on now, we get to the last two. Okay, Tony York, brilliant guy. Sends too many DVDs to my friend Ian Hill, The Ramblings. No, fantastic guy, absolutely brilliant. He says, "Hi Del. Sorry to hear you've had another challenging week. As I've mentioned in previous comments, I understood to some extent what you're experiencing due to myself being a sole carer and not having any siblings. For my mum, after Dad passed away in 2011, she had unfortunately been suffering mental health problems since 1990, requiring several hospital stays over the years. She then became physically quite frail a year or so before passing in 2020. As I see it, you're lucky having your sister to help out and to share problems with. On the one hand, yeah, that's where I keep turning around and going, my sister's amazing. You know what I mean? Tony knows this. But at the same time, it appears to be causing you added stress for you due to disagreements with her. And I think from how you describe it, the bullying tactics on your brother-in-law, I hope you can see how it's not being helpful, to say the least, and are able to be more respectful towards you in the future. Well, you never know. When my mother passes, I don't think the funeral's going to be very nice, is it? In my opinion, the caring allowance your sister is being paid should have, first of all, gone at least some way to recompensing you for your spending over the last few months, buying things for your mum. Then future benefit payments should be split evenly between the two of you. I don't see how anyone could dispute all that, in fairness. And I don't know quite why it's not that way. I can only imagine that my sister thinks that I didn't use any of my money and I'm spending the rent money on buying the food. So what is there to give me? But what she doesn't understand is the amount of pads we had to buy. You know, they only came in packs of 10. The washing powder, we buy those tabs. Before my mum felt ill, we'd use the washing machine twice a week. It's now every day. See what I mean? So it all builds up. We used to go to Iceland and buy a month's worth of food from Iceland, frozen stuff, because my mum would have tomato soup. She'd like a chicken fillet burger or something like that. So she'd buy Findus chicken fillet burgers. My sister's asked me for 5 months to buy skinless salmon with parsley sauce. Do you understand? This is where I'm trying to come across and say, regardless of what I used to pay my mum for the rent, those things bump up the price. And that's where I had to then use my money, and my money diminished in over 6 months, £3,000. But she doesn't see that. And she then says, well, show me the receipts then. So we're going to get, it will come to a head. But those are arguments for a later day. These are things that I don't care about now. We're looking after my mum. And my sister is a fantastic carer, and I'm caring as best as I possibly can. I'm in awe of what we both do. But it has to be said that those things are going to be a problem, and they stress me out. As for the DVLA problem, it's a pure farce. There should be some compensation payable for each day that you have wrongfully been deprived of your license. Fat chance of that, though. Very best wishes for the future, and it's quite right. I mean, just think of the car insurance every month. You know, what damage you might have done to my car with the brakes, you know, being seized and all that sort of stuff. It's been there for 10 weeks now. And all of the stuff I've had to do to get about to get my mum her stuff, etc., etc. They won't see any of that. I'm a number. I am that number on the license. That's it. Thank you very much for the very best wishes, Tony. Thank you so much for all you do for Ian and me. It really is appreciative. I think it's wonderful what you do. You upgrade your Blu-rays, you pass them on to Ian. I think that relationship is, well, I'm jealous. You know, it's absolutely marvellous to have something like that happen. And Ian, I know, is very appreciative of it. Everything you send him, he reviews. I mean, there's so many people that get these types of things happen to them. They don't even watch the film. They just go, oh, thanks. It just sticks on a shelf. But saying that, we all have different times and to these things, and not everybody has got the time to sit down. I know that Ian has more time than me, and I wouldn't be able to do what he does, which is why his output is so high. But it doesn't make a blind bit of difference. I'd still, you know, we're both appreciative, and thank you very much for being there for us when we're doing our live stream. And salute, my friend, thank you. And we get to the last one, which is Frank Holder, and he says, I don't comment often, but I always watch and thumb up your videos. But I have to say, it sounds like your sister and her husband are selfish and nasty people. Well, I won't say that. And who don't care about you or your health. No, they don't. That's true. I think it might be worth you getting legal advice. That costs money, by the way, before it's needed. If you know what I mean. By the looks of it, when your mum is gone, these people will do their best to take everything from you. No, we've already talked about this, and my sister said she's just going to follow the will to the T. I do think getting some legal advice right now would be better than waiting until the inevitable happens. I'll consider that, but it's money. Got none. If my mum died, my savings that would have paid for her funeral have gone. I look at things like that. That's what hurts the most. You know, it's why I put an answer to you in text form. I tried to balance everything. My sister is a fantastic carer, and both of us do everything for my mother. But yes, if my sister thinks she is correct, if she thinks she is correct, she will stick to her guns and make things difficult. And that is my sister. Don't cross her. If you don't cross her, fine. You cross her, she'll make your life a living misery. But I end as I always do, which is we both are doing everything we can. I love my sister. That'll never change. But we have problems, and I don't think they will ever change. 20 years we didn't talk to each other, and we're thrown into this kettle, a boiling kettle, and problems arise. That's all I can say about it. If you know anybody is watching about my sister, I love her to death, and I'd never say an incorrect assumption on something. It will be the truth, and this is a diary that proves that. So thanks very much, guys. That's the end of that. I'm just going to take a quick break. I've got to 2 hours and haven't stopped. So just give me a moment and I'll be back. And I'm back. I only took a couple of minutes and it's amazing. I got through 2 hours without pausing. Amazing. Maybe that's an indication of you know, getting better or whatever. I'm not quite sure, but drinking lots of water. It's so nice, this water, just Highland Spring sparkling water. Bad because it's acid. You know what I mean? When you put sparkling water in your stomach, it's an acid rather than still water. But it seems to quench my thirst when I used to drink so much Diet Coke and stuff. So, and I still drink my orange juice. Not so much. One every 2 days, really. And I eat a banana every day. Which is bad potassium, I suppose. I should be eating apples and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, and I was just when I took a break, I just looked at my alert, and there was some guy that's put up something called Techno Parrot. Now, it's an arcadey thing, right? It's a front end, I think, is why it's called Techno Parrot. But it's playing games much later on than I never played. And I first heard about it, believe it or not, from my friend Mainmeister. I think he demonstrated it and he was in awe of it for about a week. Did lots of videos on it and then didn't do any more. And I'm going to put a question out there. I've got to phrase the question correctly, though. We always seem to go back, us people of a certain age, that played arcade games, back to our early days, and we keep going back to Donkey Kong and Pac-Man, which is no big problem. But I was watching this Techno Parrot, and it had Chase HQ 2 on it, right? And I remember Chase HQ, never a big fan of it, but I saw Chase HQ 2 and I was thinking, wow, look at the visuals on that, and wonder why is it therefore that I don't see many people using Techno Parrot for an arcade front end than they do playing the original Chase HQ, where there's millions of YouTube people playing that. Maybe it's because of the size. Maybe it's because of the powerhouse that you probably need to play that front end. I don't know. For me, it's, you know, my PC is a bit old. It hasn't got a lot of space. The space that you require to play, say, Akai Katani, I think it's called, which is a bullet hell shoot 'em up, which I would challenge Colin Jones at in a heartbeat, or playing Batman or Blazing Skies, which looks amazing, by the way, because that's looks like a World War II Spitfire shooting game, which I'd be well into if I had a Techno Parrot. I want to know, why is it that you guys are not playing on that? I know we're all into our Mister and going back, but I tell you, I'm always in awe of the old games because I didn't play every one. And there's people like Colin Jones and Steve that will go alphabetically through them, playing them all and know them and go, yeah, and then challenge and all that sort of stuff. Same with MAME. But don't play the later ones as much. And Techno Parrot games, I don't think there's many in MAME. So why are you guys not on that? Be nice possibly sometimes to show those and do high score kerfuffles on them. Maybe they don't have many high scores on them. Maybe the types of games in there are just not the type that you want. But I'd be playing Blazing Skies and Batman, and I think there's a Star Wars one in there. Chase HQ2's in there, and that had a scoring system, so I take it's not that. But anyway, I put that out to you. Techno Parrot, I just watched a video on it. Seems great. So we move, sorry, I need my pad. I don't know why I put it up there, because I need to know what I watched this week. Very quickly, because we haven't got a lot of time. Watched on YouTube, you know, the 4 that I watch every week. This week in Retro, Tech Moan, Gadget Show, Chronologically Gaming. This week in Retro did the A1200 update, which I gave you last week. And as I said, it's a little bit unfair, but they film on a Tuesday, so they wouldn't have seen the announcement. They also did Retro his retro and greetings programs, which is a little bit on Tron, to be quite honest. So those were very interesting subjects, and I loved them. Techmoan didn't come out with anything until today, so I put a question mark there yesterday, but he's done something today. It was the Panasonic Mr. Finn CIA spy radio. Very interesting, because he brought in an actual real story in regards to this little mini radio, which was credit card size. It fitted inside a sort of, it was no bigger than the old calculators that fitted inside a wallet. And apparently there was a true CIA story where there was a spy that was using that to listen to radio broadcasts on a certain frequency. Very interesting, definitely worth a watch. The Gadget Show did Samsung's big swipe at Apple Vision Pro. Apple have got a VR unit called Vision Pro. Samsung have just brought out one to rival it, but it's not in the UK, so you can't see it. It's got a resolution of a mind-warping 4K in VR. The same as Apple's, with a price tag of about £1,700, £1,800 to Apple's £3,000. I wouldn't have been able to afford that, but I'd have loved to have put one on and seen it. My God, I'm happy with my MetaQuest 3, don't get me wrong, but wow, wouldn't it be great to see that? And chronologically, gaming is continuing with 1982. He's got to. He's doing one a week, where it used to be one every day. He's got up to Space Wars on the Vectrex and a few other home computer games, but 1982 December is what he's in. December is a big month because it was coming up to Christmas, and the Atari VCS was king at the time. So yeah, this is over in America really. But what else did I watch? Well, I watched a Jerry Anderson channel, just called Jerry Anderson. It was the making of Captain Scarlet. I always watch these things. I don't know whether I'd watched it before. I think I had, but I watched it again. There was a little channel that I've watched before called Little Car. Don't know why it's called that, but he did a title of the thing I watched was called Just a Toy. It was the story of the ZX80, and I had a ZX80, so I was very interested in that. Then I saw a channel called Golden Flicker, which I watched a lot of videos from Golden Flicker. I'd never come across it before. It's one of those 10 shocking facts type broadcasts, videos that are on films, and this one was on the day the Earth stood still and Planet of the Apes. So go figure that it turned up in my alerts. Brilliant it was. I watched that, found it fantastic. Then of course there was big Doctor Who news, so I watched the Confused Adipose. The Confused Adipose is what the channel's called, and that's because Doctor Who has had an announcement this week to say that it's coming back and it will be out at Christmas 2026. With Russell T Davies penning that one episode. So of course lots of speculation. Is he still going to be the showrunner? How we're going to get over the regeneration, etc., etc. But we've got an actual date, and it means that there will be speculation aplenty now while we wait 18 months or however long it is. I think it's 14 months before we get to that. Then I watched, for the first time in a long time, Cine Massacre. Cine Massacre was the angry video guy, right? And I used to watch his stuff. It used to make me laugh. He used to swear and all this sort of stuff at games on the NES and that. He did Werewolf the Last Warrior by Angry Video Game Nerd, which is what he was called, AVGN. And it was just funny. It was nice to go back to him. His production values were always great, but I haven't watched him in a long time. And then there was another channel called Nostalgia Explained. Now I watched this because I was bored. I was doing a spreadsheet. It came up in the alert. I wouldn't normally listen to it, but for anybody out there that wants to know, go to this channel, Nostalgia Explained, because he did a broadcast called Every TV Screen Type Explained in 12 minutes. So he goes from CRT all the way up to our latest type OLED, pixel, LED type TVs, and he explains how they're all made up, how they work, what the differences are, etc., etc. So that was great. That's what I watched on YouTube this week, till we get to the film, TV, soundtrack, YouTube stuff. And we've got Ian Hill, The Ramblings, and you know he's my mate. Fantastic. Do a live with him. If you don't support him, God knows why. I haven't got a clue. Couldn't do without him, really. It breaks up my Wednesday. It really does. And he's really helping me at the moment, because now that I deal with getting my mum to bed solely by myself, I'm not really there until 9 o'clock. My mother goes to bed between 8 and 9, and sometimes it takes longer than others to get her to bed. If she's not too tired, it takes ages. If she's tired, it's quite quick, about 35 minutes. But there are always times where she'll need to go to the toilet and all of this sort of stuff, and it slows the whole process down. So my thanks to Ian. Thank you so much for bearing with me and sticking with me, to be quite honest. You could easily just turn around and say, what a shit, can't have this. And it just helps me no end, to be quite honest. So what did he bring out this week? He did his top 5 war films between 2006 and 2012. So God knows what the next subject will be, because he's getting very close now to 2025. He did a Doctor Who review of Battlefield, which basically means he's getting close to that one I mentioned, Curse of Fenric. X-Files review, Season 5, Episode 3. He did an SFX magazine review, because he buys the magazine SFX, which I used to buy, but I don't anymore. He did the November 2025 issue, and he did a live with me. So absolutely fantastic. And my salute to you, my friend. Thank you so much for supporting me. I'll be definitely continuing to support you. You are just out of this world in regards to where you are in my life. Thank you. We get to Mondo Celovic movies, which, as I told you before, is where I learn about all my horror stuff. He did 88 films, slasher and Italian collection. Brilliant. And he did an October 2025 Vinegar Syndrome subtitles. So he's a subscriber to Vinegar Syndrome, who send out films each month for this yearly subscription. I could never afford it, to be quite honest. But they do so many horror releases to him, and he's talking about things that I've wanted people to talk about for ages, which is steelbook protectors or physical media protectors. I gave him a list a long time back of some of the dimensions, which I was given years ago, and he's continuing that, and I think that's marvelous, because the cellophane covers that people cut out, I don't think a lot of people understand that cellophane degrades, and it sticks to the cardboard of your physical media, and it can, just like a comic, peel the image off as the years go by, because it perishes because of the natural acidity in the air and how plastic reacts. It degrades. It's a biodegradable product which uses we use chemicals to diminish further, but naturally shrivels up. So you need to be wary of that, and that's why these hard protectors are such importance to me. So well done, Mondo, and I'm not worthy. I really am not. Thank you very much. Keep up the good work. Through the Lens, far more output coming out from him. That's Josh, my friend. He does some fantastic movie reviews. He did Blondie, Netflix biggest failure, he calls that. That's interesting, isn't it? When somebody puts something as strong as that, could it be Netflix biggest failure? Well, you'll have to go and look, won't you? Frankenstein 2025. Does it work? In 2025, does the new Frankenstein film work? Go and look at the review. It'd be very interesting to know what his thoughts are. And Ballad of a Small... Can't read my own writing. Oh, Ballad of a Small Player, I think it's called. It's a review. I haven't seen that film. I think Commode's done that. So again, he looks at such films that are mainstream but also obscure. Definitely worth your time going to. And Josh, thank you so much for all of your output. Brilliant. I don't think I could get through the week without knowing what's going on in the world of cinema without you. So then you got Did You See That? He did some movie reviews as well. He did Chainsaw Man, Shelby Oaks, but most importantly, he went to the IMAX theatre to celebrate Back to the Future's 40th anniversary. He loved it, of course. But fantastic channel if you want to go and watch and see some and look at some reviews this week. Muckman-Movies did the live that I talked about, the horror films that scared us. He did it live with Ian Hill last Sunday. You can watch a replay of it. It's definitely worth 3.5 hours of your time. It was a long broadcast, almost as long as what I do with Ian, and it was fantastic. I learned so much. I've already talked just now about him. Commode on Film. He posed the question to everybody out there: do you change, or does the movie change? Because he wanted to do a retrospective to say, is it the movie that changes, or is it us that change when we're looking back at an old film? Of course, the obvious answer is, well, the film never changes. But he wanted to bring in retrospective type things that happen, such as, does nostalgia hold a big interest? Does the world changing alter our opinion on something? Do we see a film and 3 months later watch it again and our opinion changes? Is it because of something that's happened in those 3 months? Is it because you were built up on the hype of it all? Fantastic sort of like a deliberation on things. Made me think anyway. And of course, he actually does something that he used to do on the radio, right? When I was listening to radio in the car. He does it with Simon Mayo. He did some reviews of Down Cemetery Road, Relay, Begonia, and the box office top 10. So absolutely fantastic. I love his reviews. They don't always agree with me, but I definitely get his point. And then, of course, Movie Collector, who's that ex-projectionist that I watch like a hawk. I learned so much from him. He wanted to show off his Master and Commander film on Super 8, which is a format for a projector, now that the 4K is out. And he wanted to show you how you connect that projector up to have DTS sound and how it works. So definitely worth a watch on that. And we get to the end and we're talking about Game and Tech YouTube, which is my friends that are on my Discord or Mainmeister's Discord or people I've known for years. And we get down the rabbit hole. He's done a couple of videos. He did Vectrex Into the Fray. And that's a beat-em-up type game on the Vectrex system, which was very interesting. And then he did... This is what it was worded as. It's intensive how Far Cry 3 and 4 swap maturity. And that's a very interesting aspect. This is what he does. He knows of a game he's played, Far Cry 3. He's talks about a game that he played just recently, Far Cry 4. And he sees that in the Far Cry 3, you're a parent, you're a child looking for your parent. And in Far Cry 4, it's the reverse. You're the parent looking for the child. So has our maturity changed in regards to how we play games? Does it work because it's a role reversal? Very interesting. Definitely worth a mention and a view. And I think he did a live stream on a tabletop game that I wish I'd played as a kid, but I didn't. It came up in my alert, but I don't know too much about Star Frontiers. So I only watched a little bit of it. But that might be worth mentioning to you. The next one is Robert's Retro Gaming, which is Canadian royalty. I'm not worthy, I have to say that. And he does lots and lots of Atari stuff. But he does far more than that. Here we are. This is what he comes out with. And it's a ton of stuff. He did Dwarf Fortress Episode 11, Minecraft Play Episode 166, Commodore 64 play of Terra Cresta, SNES play of Blaze On, and Atari 8-bit play of Picnic Paranoia and Nadal. So look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things. That's one a day. You might as well. You probably got something out today, but I haven't looked at it yet. Fantastic. I'm Not Worthy. A good friend of mine. I played Minecraft with him. That's how well we know each other. It was a few years back now, but fantastic memories I have of that. Steve's Gaming Part 2. My God, he did a Twitch replay of Steel Rising, and he did my challenge to him of Cliffhanger in the Del and Steve challenge, and he's challenged me to a game that I know very little about. So I've got to do that video, and then I've got to reverse it by giving him a game. Is it going to be a nasty one? Is it going to be a gem of one? Who knows? We will see. I might be really angry at his challenge. We'll see how it goes. Salute, my friend. Steve's Gaming. You bastard H. Channel's just too good, you little shit. And it is. It really is a great channel. I couldn't live without that channel, I have to say. And I'm so glad he put the Twitch stuff over to YouTube so I could watch it, because I just don't get on with Twitch. It's just how it is with me. Colin Jones, aka Ponder, which I talked about before. He did a Mainmeister high score kerfuffle on VS Balloon Fight, which he's actually given to me as a game to play in the friends request me to play games. I think that's on today, so I'm looking forward to ending my blog and looking at that later on. And you've got Seb's Place. Seb's Place comes from a time where I watched him go into charity stores and basic sort of like gadget stores and buy stuff with a retrospective feel. Now he's got full of gloss. He does so much more. He did a video called First Commodore 64 Games versus the last Commodore 64 games, and poses the question, which is better? And that's because he did a Spectrum version of that. Now, I wouldn't have gone about it the way that he did, but it's an absolute fantastic video. And you'll see some great memories, and you can see the movement in power behind programmers as they code games now compared to how they coded games back in 1982-83. So yeah, that was absolutely brilliant. And that's the end of the written down part of it, other than Mainmeister, who, as you know, does a Friday waffle. And he's doing a Sunday stream tonight of games, if he can get around to it. He's a very busy person. I don't get to see a lot of his stuff anymore because of the way things are with my mum. But when I do, I get a fuzzy feeling in my stomach over a guy that I considered to be one of my best friends and a big supporter of me. And it's just a shame that I can't be there all the time anymore, and that we haven't spoken for a long time. But he's had a traumatic 6 weeks or so, and he's come out the other side stronger than ever. And that's the thing. You have to pick yourself up, don't you? My good friend Mainmeister, I hope you're okay. And I'm just going to quickly go to Overhead Cam, which I always do, just to show what came through the post this week. So we have got a standard steelbook only version of Event Horizon, which again, I don't know if you can see, is one of those slipcover ones where you can see you pull the plastic sleeve off and you see the picture behind it. So this one's got a glossy eye, I can see, and the slipcover has got these hands pointing towards the eye. Now I've got a collector's edition of this, but this came up cheap, so I ordered it. And you can see you get 2 discs, a Blu-ray and the 4K of it. So I'm very glad to have that because I really like the cover. That was the reason why I got that. Now a personal favourite of mine, probably the highlight of the week, but it's tied with another one. This one is Outland. This is Sean Connery's science fiction opus, really. A Peter Hyams film, as you can see there, which I've done a retrospective on for the Blu-ray, and it's now out on 4K from Warner Brothers and Arrow Video. Absolutely marvellous, and the amount of extras on here, absolutely fantastic. I'm really looking forward to that. Now, a little horror. I Know What You Did Last Summer, Steelbook edition. quite a nice looking steelbook. Still could have been so much better. It's got some sort of like spot glossing on it, so rather than just being matte, it stands out really well actually on this camera, but it's not that exciting. I got it on the cheap, so happy with that. And the one that was tied was this one, The Wild Robot, which is a cartoon film from DreamWorks. Yeah, DreamWorks. It's individually numbered. So I've got 1,775 of 3,000, so quite a high number. But it comes in a nice presentation box. You can see what you get. You get posters, cards, the films, steelbook, all of that sort of stuff. And I really do love these hard case editions. They're absolutely fantastic. And that draws this to a close. Thanks very much for watching. I do hope you got some enjoyment out of it. Maybe you can thumb it up. Maybe you saw it and you want to know more about my history and you'd like to subscribe and look at my previous history. I don't know. But the one thing I do know is I'm so glad that you listened all the way to this point. Thank you so much. And I've now got to go and look after my mother. So I will have to end this. I've got a picture to do and got it uploaded. So salute to everybody and roll on next week. And hopefully you'll see a couple of videos during the week from me. Thanks for sticking with me while you're waiting for more content. It is coming. Thank you so much. Salute. Bye-bye.